Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. On behalf of the Board of Education, welcome to our board workshop this evening for the budget. This workshop is being recorded. The recording with the full meeting will be available shortly through the school website using a link through board docs. Please make sure at this time to silence or turn your phones off so that we may conduct this workshop without any disruption. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. So today we're going to start the budget workshop. 2 weeks ago, we talked about the expenditures. So this meeting, we're going to talk about the revenues. So we got to talk about how we're going to pay for that budget. So a lot of the focus today is going to be talking about our two big revenue sources, which is our local taxes and the state aid. And then we're going to compare those revenues to our current expenditures, our updated expenditures. Those are changing by the hour during the workday. So I'll give you the latest and greatest that we're at. And then we're going to look at our 5-year plan or talk more about a 5-year plan that's in development. So our revenues on the screen, I know it's hard to see, so there's printouts there for everybody, is the tax cap calculation from the state comptroller website. This is an exact screenshot from the portal. As you can see, there's not a lot going on for us. Fortunately, that's a good thing and a bad thing. So at the end of entering our inputs and the outputs, our allowable tax levy for next year is 11,135,705, which represents a 2.03% increase, or 221,824 if we were to go to the cap. On the other side is our state aid. So to the left is one of the state aid output reports. And as you can see, is an antiquated system, and there's no way to just filter out just the Honeywell Central School District's state aid stuff. So, and then we have our own analysis to the right. If you look at all the different components, our foundation aid, it looks like it's going up 1% in this run, although the assembly and the legislature is pushing for 2%. The feedback that I am receiving from the advocacy groups seems like 2% is a fair number to be going with. So at this time, we feel comfortable moving forward with the 2% foundation aid. Unfortunately, the 1% only represents an additional $63,000 from this state aid run report, but I don't have another state aid run report, an updated one that reflects 2% at this time. There is an initiative in New York State to better fund UPK, and by the 28-29 school year, go to a truly universal UPK program, which would be great for our students. So the funding is going to go from $5,400 for a full day student to $10,000 a full day. You just divide it in half for the half day program. Other than that, BOCES is going up because of utilization of BOCES and then changes made last year in the New York State budget, which allows for more of BOCES salaries to become aidable. So as you can see, BOCES is going up about roughly 13.32%. Our excess costs and private excess costs relates to our special ed programming. So we have a dollar threshold assigned by New York State. Anything above that threshold or in excess, hence the name, is eligible for aid at our aid ratio. So you can see a little bit of an increase or a decrease in that because of our threshold keeps increasing. You see a decrease in hardware technology, software, library, textbooks. These are referred to as instructional material aids, and it is a flat number multiplied by the number of pupils. So as we continue to decline in pupils, those aid ratios go down. In red is our transportation number. Unfortunately, the way that New York State calculates this number is at the end of the year, we report our actual expense and then our budgeted number. So usually if you were to take that transportation number, you will find yourself in a predicament because the goal is never to spend 100% of that budget. Hopefully we have it just in case variable costs. So we are adjusting for that. So down below, the state aid report, says that we're going to receive 8,672,188. Unfortunately, UPK is not a general fund expense inside a school district. We're essentially, there's many different funds, and the best way to think of it is we're running multiple businesses. So we have the general fund, taxpayer fund, we have our grants, we have the school lunch fund, we have the capital project fund. They're all different. Unfortunately, UPK is not a revenue to the general fund. It is a revenue to the federal fund, which is our grants. So we have to back that number out because we're comparing a revenue that doesn't apply to the expenditures we're talking about. And a small adjustment for the transportation, and that was used by taking our actual expenditures increase from year to year, um, to give a better actual number for what we expect our transportation aid. So based off of our review of the state aid formula, we are looking at 858,521,712 plus an additional 63,342 that we are hoping for in foundation aid. So why is foundation aid such a headache for us? So the next slide represents some output reports. If you dig into the state aid formula, there's a lot of information that we're going to go over today. On paper, Honeoye is roughly 20% wealthier than the state of New York. And if you look in that blue box there, it is our foundation aid per pupil. And this is in comparison of all 25 component districts. We received the third lowest foundation aid per pupil in the Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES. And this is largely driven by what the state believes is the wealth of the community. And the reason why they think that we're wealthy is they take the whole valuation of the community that makes up HCS and divide by our pupil. And then they're like, hey, your students are living in much more fancier houses than the rest of the state of New York, which we know isn't true. So we just want to bring that to everybody's attention that unfortunately, the way that the state aid formula works, it works against us. So that makes us have to make some hard decisions. On the next page is another calculation done by New York State where they are recommending, at the top you'll see expected minimum local contribution per pupil, which represents what they expect the taxpayers to pay to fund education. And if you look at Honeoye, they expect that the community contributes an additional $22,186.55 per pupil to fund education, which would result in a 12% tax increase in order to meet that metric. But at the same time, they're giving us a tax cap formula that says you can go up to 2.03%. Otherwise, you need a supermajority. So some of the stuff that we're working with kind of contradicts itself and kind of puts us in a bad spot. They want us to contribute 12% more, but only gives us the ability to go up 2% without going through extra hurdles to get there. So in addition to that, every time we have a few areas where we get reimbursable aids, and that is through our building aid, transportation aid, excess cost aid, BOCES aid. And if you look at Honeoye in comparison to all of our neighboring districts, we are the third lowest reimbursement rate in the Wayne Finger Lakes district. If the district were to receive the appropriate funding based off of our other districts, just on the reimbursable aid side alone, the district would receive an additional $500,000 solely on the reimbursable aid side. So again, I'm just trying to point out the challenges that we face, and we're not alone in this. There's the two districts that are more impacted than even us are Naples and Penn Yan. And we all know that they're kind of in the same boat as us. They're not showing the wealth, but some districts, depending on the aid category you look at, they're receiving almost double the aid that we're receiving. So in addition to state aid, we receive other revenues, and as we go through them, so tuition relates to when we receive a student from another district, we got to bill them back. If you remember in October when Mr. Tom Zuber met with us, we were budgeting $300,000 for interest. But unfortunately, the majority of the interest that we receive is related to our money that are in reserves. And per general municipal law, we really can't use that reserve interest for operating funds. The money must go back in the reserves. So in the year that it makes money, we can't actually use it to balance the budget, but in subsequent years, we can tap into the reserves to balance the budget. So rather than using it to balance the budget and not actually being able to access the money, we need to correct that to, hey, about the cash on hand in our operating account will generate roughly $25,000, but then we need to appropriate more reserves to make up for it. So I don't want that to concern anybody because it's just a shift in methodology. We can get to the same answer. It's just we really can't be using interest to balance the budget. It needs to go into the reserve and then come out of the reserve. At the time when the budget was made last year, we were still in the midst of negotiating with the town of Richmond for the lease of the bus garage. Now we have a 10-year agreement with the town of Richmond. So you see a small decrease that actually reflects the agreement with the town of Richmond for the lease. And then a few miscellaneous, the BOCES refund. Best practice really tells you to avoid that because hopefully one day BOCES doesn't budget 10% over, and then we wouldn't get that refund. But in the situation we're in, we're going to stay there. So our miscellaneous revenues are going down, but keep in mind that it will be made up through the use of reserves. So in a year-to-year comparison, unfortunately, it looks like our revenues are going down. It's going down roughly $202,000 or roughly 1%. Um, so right now, as you can see, in the current year, the district is using $665,000 reserves to balance this year's budget. The finance committee is still looking at and exploring what reserves to use for this upcoming school year. So right now, you'll see in the 26-27 school year, $307,000 is being used from reserves. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about how we're going to be borrowing money for the capital project. We're going to receive capitalized interest in that borrowing, and then we're going to use that interest to pay that debt. So right now, that $307,000 figure represents that capitalized interest only. So the finance committee are meeting, I want to say April 6th. And at that time, we'll discuss a little bit further about what type of other reserves we're going to tap into to balance the budget. But making those decisions while the budget is so fluid right now is kind of counterproductive because as we allocate the reserves and we become more efficient in the budget, now we got to trim back some of the reserves. So that's kind of at the end of the budget cycle once we finalize our expenditures. So current expenditures, and these are updated again to the day. Um, Positive news is our current budget through efficiencies with the admin team is that we're down roughly $200,000 from when we met a couple weeks ago, which is great, which now our budget represents a $1.3 million increase or 6.46%. Again, we're just looking through efficiencies and how we can best use our staff. But what does that mean when our revenues and our expenditures don't meet? So this slide represents a 2-year comparison of revenues and expenditures, and then at the bottom is a 5-year projection. Unfortunately, that 5-year projection does not look promising, but we're aware of the situation and we're working on it. Part of the district's plan, and it's already a couple weeks involved, is we're looking at building a 5-year instructional plan that coincides with a 5-year budget. And we don't want either one of them driving one. We want them to be driving together for the goals. So we're looking at currently what courses we want to offer. We're looking at future staff retirements. Where can we capitalize on teacher certifications? Can we find any type of efficiencies? But as we get into, got to remember this order of the slides. So as you can see, by the 28-29 school year, on our projection, it looks like we're going to be needing $7 million of reserves to get through the 28-29 school year. Do we have that much in reserves? As of today, we have $7.7 million in reserves, but there are some reserves that we really can't use the budget for. For example, $3 million is in a capital building reserve that can only be used, we can only spend via budget vote or voter approval, and it can only be used for capital projects. In addition, we have a liability reserve that hopefully we don't have to use because the only time you can use that is if you're being sued. So we can we're going to have to want to evaluate that number and see what options are available to remove that from that reserve because it's a very restrictive reserve and we hope that we never have it. I mean, it's always good to have it in the case of being sued. And then we have a repair reserve that has $2,400 in it. You're not going to get much out of it, but per general municipal law, when you spend out of that reserve, you have to refund the money out of that back to that reserve in a certain period of time. So it's not an efficient reserve to use for this. So at the end of the day, we really have currently $4 million in accessible reserves, give or take the plan for that liability reserve. So if we go back to the previous slide, we're looking at getting through 27, 28 into the 28, 29 school year before we're depleted. So that's some of the work that we're working through and how we can better find more efficiencies in the districts, align our instructional plan to our budget plan and what is in the best interest of the community and our students. So not great news, but I'll turn that over to the board if you guys have any questions for me at this time. Sure.
I'm just wondering, you brought up the super majority thing. That's not something that we are thinking about or considering.
No, not at this time. We're not. So in our conversations, last year we mentioned to the community that we're going out of the 5% because that was and we promised the community this year that we weren't going to do that. And we felt like it was most appropriate to honor that. So at this time, we're not exploring that. Sorry, I tried to move the slide based off of where you were at.
I was just happy where I wrote it down.
So no, we're not looking to break the cap. So we're really looking to utilize the reserves to kind of build a runway while we develop the 5-year plan. And some of the concerns with building the 5-year plan is the sequences that kids are currently in a instructional path. Like for example, if we were to cut a foreign language, there's kids that are currently in that foreign language that will need the subsequent years. So it's not as easy as saying, we're going to cut a foreign language. And this is just purely example. I don't build programming, so I don't want anybody to think that, hey, we're cutting foreign language. That's just the low hanging fruit for somebody, an accountant to understand. So there's students in that path. So we can't just say, hey, we're only offering one foreign language. And now that student is like, hey, where do I go for Spanish or French too? So we're using the reserves as the runway while we better align our instructional plan and our budget plan. And we're going to use that to make sure that students get what they need. And then we look at our course offerings. Does it look like some of our classes are offered every other year? We don't know. We're in the early infancy stage of building that plan.
And once we get them aligned, that helps us build towards the 5-year plan.
Correct. Yep.
I just have one question for you, Derek. It says, in the state aid, it says transportation, including summer. We don't have, what are buses being used for in the summer, I guess is my question.
ESY. So we have some special ed kids that go out of district to Mary Carroll and Norman Howard BOCES. So some of that is related to ESY programs. Do you want to go up, Carol? Yeah. For people at home, it might be best for you to be on the
Yeah,
speaker.
Carol, we'll have you come up and use the microphone, please.
Spread, is that right?
Yep, you're good.
I think it's fantastic that you're doing a 5-year plan. It's something I've been asking for a long time because this is, not sustainable.
Yep.
And a lot of concerns about decreasing enrollment, increased numbers going into BOCES. So great move there too.
Yep.
And I just wanted to address the wealth of the community. It's actually correct. We are a wealthy community. We get 64% of the tax money from the lakefront properties, and we've smashed through those $1 million homes. It used to be, we never had a home over $1 million, and we do now. So for the number of properties in this district, we actually are a wealthy community, which has been a double-edged sword. It's because, it's kept the tax rate low, which is, a source of pride, but only one part of the formula. But, we have this issue too, so.
Yeah.
But are you trying to address that, and what are the odds of getting that changed? I was a little confused.
So in my next steps conversation, we were going to bring that up, but since you bring it up, we'll address it now. So we are not this isn't a unique issue to Honeyway. And thank you for your feedback on that. There are some schools like up in the Thousand Islands area that is experiencing very similar data in regards to the wealth. To say Victor is twice as wealthy as us, I don't know about that, and maybe you're correct. I don't know that data, but so right now we're working with several advocacy. We have the Rural Schools Association. Natalie is part of the New York State Council of School Superintendents. I'm part of the Association of School Business Officials, and we all voice our concerns to our legislative team, and then they go to New York State. And the interesting fact is, about 3 years ago, New York State hired the Rockefeller Institute to go around and look at the wealth of the school districts. And the Rockefeller is actually another arm of New York State. And the Rockefeller Institute actually said, hey, you need to take a look at the wealth of the districts and change the weighting of these things. So the New York State's arm at the Rockefeller Institute actually supported the school districts that said, this number needs to be looked at again because the weighting of it isn't fair to some of our schools. So
Right.
unfortunately, New York State is also they're every time we go to them, another group comes to them and asks for money too, and they got to answer to more constituents than even we have to answer to.
Right. I mean, up in the Adirondacks, few students, I've looked at those districts. I mean, it's super high. But are you working with the town at all? Because the 64% was prior to the reassessment that, was mandated that you had to do it, but they could give you data to help you support this and make a tough battle.
Yeah, we agree it's a tough battle, but I would be remiss if we didn't try to. I'm part of our job is to try to help support the community,
Sure.
and through advocacy is the best way to do it. So if we can bring in more state aid, that makes us less dependent on the community. So our hopes is to have the state pitch in more and the community less in the future.
Hey, they can only say no, right? So.
Right. I mean, if they can't take it. Well, they could, but hopefully they
Right.
don't take it away.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's what's pushing families out because they can't afford to buy here. So
Yep.
It's tough. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Any other questions?
I was just wondering one more thing. So I'm sure that you already have, you and Superintendent Fluke together, but with BOCES, is there any way or any other ways they can help us? Are there more things that we could be utilizing that they would help pay for or anything of that sort?
So BOCES doesn't receive state aid nor tax levy.
Right.
So all their funding comes through us. And
Mhm.
so actually to the opposite, we're actually looking at how we can be more effective by not utilizing BOCES because BOCES has overhead costs that gets billed through. So for example, on today's agenda is the formation of an occupational therapist. So right now we don't have the budget for the OT for BOCES because we still don't have their numbers for next year. But so if we were to take a 6% increase, we're looking at $140,000 to purchase an OT from BOCES. When we looked and ran the numbers, we found that we would be able to save, sorry, it's on my agenda page. We're going to be able to save roughly $38,000 by hiring that person in district. And then another example of how we're trying to cut costs is our special ed department is working with the other special eds in the other areas. So if we send a student to BOCES, it's roughly $70,000 for special ed. But right now we're sending 4 kids to Bloomfield and the average cost is $35,000. So we're working with our neighboring districts to try, because when we bill in neighboring districts, we're not billing for Superintendent Fluke, we're not billing for herself, we're billing for only what's in the classroom. But when you bill for BOCES, they have supervisors that they don't have a state aid or tax levy to fund those. So we get to pay for those in the special ed program. So some of what we're doing, especially in the special ed, because special ed is not eligible for BOCES aid, it's eligible for excess cost aid. So those are easy pullbacks because they're just not cost effective, but we're at the mercy of giving our size. We don't have 12 kids in a grade level to support a 12-1-1, but maybe Naples, Bloomfield, and Honeywell together could. So those are some of the options that we're looking for, but in order to do that, we're all got to get on the same page and look at how those look. And um, how can we do things more cost effective, remote distance learning right now? And that's one of the big hurdles. We want to get to the distance learning model, but none of the bell schedules line up. I think, if Superintendent Fluke, correct me if I'm wrong, only Red Creek aligns with us. So in order to do that, somebody 90 miles away from us, we're going to be working with. So some of the, and there was a big buzzword in education in New York State of regionalization. That's some of the work that they're working towards, but unfortunately, it's not a one-year fix. It's a long plan and working with labor unions to address those needs. So we actually want to go away from BOCES. They're just not cost effective to us anymore. So next steps, we're going to continue to advocate for the correction of the state aid formula. As I mentioned, Superintendent Fluke is working with superintendents across the state in a similar situation. We're going to continue to monitor the state aid scenarios between, it's the assembly, and I the wrong there, so I apologize. With the governor's office, right now we are budgeting for that 2% foundation aid. Maybe they might go a little higher. It is an election year, fingers crossed. We still need to push for BOCES to finalize the numbers. We have estimates, and they're conservative estimates, because if they're wrong, then we're in trouble. We're going to continue to seek efficiencies with the budget. We're going to build that long-range instructional plan that ties into our budget, 5-year plan, and then explore filling any remaining budget with the deficit with those reserves that we talked about earlier.
Okay, that will conclude the budget workshop. And I would just like to again welcome from the Board of Education for coming to our meeting this evening. We're now moving into the meeting portion of this session. This meeting is being recorded. The recording will be available shortly through the school website using a link through Board Docs. We would like you to know that if you have questions or concerns, that we strongly encourage you to utilize the Honeoye Central chain of contact. This will ensure that topics that are of importance to you are directed to the appropriate person and can be looked into in a timely and efficient manner. Before we proceed, please set your phones and devices to silent or turn them off so that we can conduct board business without disruption. Jen, is there anyone signed up for public expression? Okay, then we will forego public expression this evening. We will move on to kudos. Does anybody have any that they would like to share tonight?
I would like to say thank you to the high school staff that allowed us to come into their classrooms the other day. It was very enjoyable. And middle school staff, excuse me, Ms. Flynn.
Anybody else? Huh? I have a couple. I would like to say thank you to Superintendent Fluke for asking the board to come and serve breakfast on Superintendent's Conference or Superintendent's Day. We got to serve breakfast to the faculty and staff the morning of Superintendent's Day. And then anybody that was on the strategic design team had the option to stay for the day and partake in several opportunities. It was the closest I've had the opportunity of working with teachers, and it was it's enlightening because you pass everybody in the hall, and like Jenna, I know you and you know me, but it's different seeing you in a classroom and seeing you interact with students and having the opportunity to move through the day and see like a student in an 8th grade or 9th grade class and then go further along and see them in band. So they no longer just become the math student that in somebody's class was struggling a half an hour ago to like first chair in one of the band sections. So it's interesting to get to come in and participate in things with teachers and staff. So we appreciate that. I would also like to congratulate the varsity basketball team on going as far as they did this year, to the coaches as well. Excellent job. You make us proud as always. And I would like to congratulate Peyton S., Superintendent Fluke, Principal Schneckenberger, and myself went to Newark on March 5th. And for the Superintendent's Recognitions Awards, which Superintendent Fluke will discuss in a little bit, but Peyton actually received the Weller Financial Group Scholarship for $1,000, which was the highest awarded scholarship there for the evening. I believe she was only 7 of 25 students actually selected for a scholarship. So super proud of her, and congratulations to her and her family. And also the Bulldog Beat came out, and that looks great. There is information about the dates for and time for budget vote in there from the board. So that's all I have. And then moving on to Board of Education Committee reports and updates, we have the Visitation Committee, which Karen somewhat touched on already. I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to add to what they saw yesterday on the high school and middle school tour. Go ahead.
So how many, there's 4 of us that were participated, Jerry, myself, and Tori. It's great to see, even though we saw the elementary first, oh, and Karen, I'm sorry. It's just great to see the kids in the classroom environments and how every environment is different, but every child that we went in the classroom and saw felt included. So that's the biggest part I think that we look for is the board, and not just besides academics. Everyone was involved and felt part of something. They were engaged. And that's just great to see, that I don't think everyone gets to see as being a part of the board. And the community just needs to know that it's great to see everyone in there and participating and feeling as a family here. So.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Yeah, again, like I said, it's appreciated to be invited into your space and your time and to get to share those moments. We were in Kelly Palmer Sagittellus class yesterday, and it's the first time that I've got to tour her room, and it's incredible work that's happening in there, and it's important, and I wish more people could see it, because when you do get to see it, you realize it's bigger than like a diploma. There's a teacher in that room pouring her heart into everything she does. So it's outstanding to see. So thank you again for having us come in for that. And then facilities subcommittee met yesterday for the capital improvement project bids and the EPC bid openings, and that will be discussed further on in the meeting, so I'm really not going to cover any of that now. And if nobody else has any committee reports or updates, then I will turn the floor over to Superintendent Fluke.
Okay, thank you, Tori. We have a number of celebrations to share this evening, including a presentation from our Elementary Student Council. But before that, let's take a look at a few quick highlights from across the district. First, I'm proud to recognize Peyton Slade, who has been selected as this year's Wayne Finger Lakes BoCES Superintendent Recognition Award recipient. Each district in the region identifies one outstanding senior for this honor, and Peyton was chosen for her achievements, leadership, and contributions to our school community. Even more impressive, as Tori stated, her written submission was just one of 7 selected for the scholarship out of 25 applicants. And this year, all 25 students had a written submission. That isn't always the case. So that was really outstanding for for Peyton. She was honored at the recognition dinner, here pictured here, on March 5th at the Newark Conference Center, and we are incredibly proud of how she represents our school and community. So if you see Peyton, make sure to give her a congratulatory message. I'd also like to highlight our Honeoye Masterminds teams pictured here. Our varsity team is currently undefeated in league play with just 2 meets remaining. They've shown tremendous effort and teamwork throughout the season, led by Keenan S., who is currently ranked 3rd in the area. The team will be competing next week against strong regional programs, including Fairport, Brighton, and McQuaid. Our junior varsity Masterminds team has also seen exciting growth this year, with many new members joining and contributing to several impressive wins. So thank you to their advisors, Carrie Bricko and Michelle Berger, who say they are, quote, extremely proud of the hard work and dedication both teams have shown this year. So congratulations to all of our Mastermind students on a fantastic season so far. I'd also like to give a shout out to our students who will be attending the Monroe County Math All-Star Meet at Nazareth University tomorrow. We wish them the best of luck. Last evening, we inducted 9 new members of into our National Honor Society chapter. This is a significant accomplishment, and I'd like to congratulate all of our new members. Here you see them listed on the slides. Earlier this month, our high school principal and myself attended the first ever Wayne Finger Lakes Job Fair, held at Ravenwood on March 6th. It was a valuable opportunity to connect with several strong candidates from across the region as we continue planning for staffing needs in the coming year. At Friday's Superintendent's Conference Day, also pictured here, staff participated in a full day of meaningful professional learning, along with a few wellness sessions built in. So thank you again to Erica Esquino and Lori Campbell for organizing that menu of options that day, and all of our many presenters who were there facilitating those sessions right here from within our staff. It was a great balance of both, again, professional learning and wellness, a reflection of our continued commitment to both of those, again, professional growth and staff well-being. Mrs. Gardner's second grade class recently hosted an informational writing celebration where students showcased their research and published writing. Many staff and visitors stopped in throughout that hour-long session to support the students and see their hard work firsthand. It was a great example of student pride and authentic learning in action. So you see students here presenting to each other, and then we, as staff members, went in and they read their informational writing samples to us. It was outstanding. And lastly, the PTA hosted a Tattoo a Teacher fundraiser with great participation from students, staff, and community members, raising over $1,000 to support our school programs. So that was a pretty awesome idea, whoever came up with that. All right, and now please join us in welcoming Elena Suggs and our members from our Elementary Student Council. On the right.
Okay, hi. I'm not doing much talking, they are, so I'm going to turn it over to my student council members that are here.
This year we have 16 This year we have 16 members of student council. Every member was voted in by their classmates. Our members are Maya B, Adam T, Spencer, Aria, Grayson, Jackson, Meadow, Dylan, Sam, Isla, Lenny, Bennett, Annabelle, Eli, Ben K, Juliana. 4th and 5th grade members who were interested in being an officer gave a speech and were voted into their positions.
I do have to say one card. I got one card because nobody wants to say their name. The officers are President Mia, our Vice President is Grayson, Secretary is Annabelle, and then our Treasurer is Eli, and our Public Relations Manager is Meadow.
Some things that we've done this year include caroling at Surefine and ringing the bell for Salvation Army, giving teachers gifts,
Square One Art fundraiser, and roller skating parties.
We hope to have a talent show and movie nights before the end of the year.
And that's everything. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to say too, thank you all for sharing your voices tonight, each and every one of you. You are doing an amazing job stepping into leadership roles. Let's give our young Bulldogs another round of applause. And thank you to Mrs. Suggs as well. All right, and now I turn it over to our student board member, Marley, for Student Board of Ed slides.
All right, so since the last meeting, we don't have any new updates for March. I am working with students to figure out what they want to do in the future, similar to the lip sync, because many kids did end up enjoying that. That will get all of you participating in more fun activities with them and hopefully creating a closer relationship. I'm hoping that for our next meeting, I'll have a few of these ideas ready to present. So that's all I have for tonight.
All right. And I think, Marley, if I'm not mistaken, we have a celebrity right here in the room tonight. Is our winner of the lip sync battle here tonight? Here she is. All right, Jenna Flynn, let's give her a round of applause, everybody. All right, and moving on to updates. Positions for the fall have been posted. This is earlier than usual, so we're very proud of that. And interviews will take place after spring recess. We're looking forward to bringing in strong candidates to support our students and programs. The strategic design team met. We're excited to share that we've entered into the next phase of our strategic plan. On Superintendent's Conference Day, staff worked to develop our very own Honeoye definitions of our portrait of a graduate. Last time we looked at the state's portrait. Now we are building our very own portrait of a graduate. We defined the skills and characteristics. Oops, I'm sorry, wait a minute here. Oh, defined the skills and characteristics we want every student to have by the time they reach the end of elementary school, and then again by the time they graduate. This work is aligned with the New York State Portrait of a Graduate framework while also reflecting what makes Honeoye unique. JV and varsity spring sports are underway, and modified sports will begin April 6th. The Coaches Handbook Committee has now met twice and is continuing to make progress. We appreciate the time and input from everyone involved on that team as they work through updates and improvements. And then looking ahead, again, we spoke a little bit about where we are in the budget process. Right now, we're still looking at how we can be more efficient. We met with both the elementary staff and the secondary staff this week, and we're already receiving some suggestions from them as well. We like to hear from our staff when it comes to that. The financial outlook is getting tighter. As you saw today, that was communicated out. We will likely face an increasing pressure on how we use our resources. We talked about that. We talked about class sizes and how we can efficiently use the staff that we have to continue to offer the programming we have. Some difficult decisions will be a part of that process in the coming years. What this means for us, we'll need to be more thoughtful about our priorities. Being flexible and willing to think outside the box will be really important. We talked about that. And we also talked about planning ahead and staying open to new ideas and how that will help us navigate what's ahead. Okay. And now I'm turning it over to Mr. Belize for the business office updates.
Thank you. I only have the one slide.
Oh.
So as Tori and Ms. Superintendent Fluke mentioned, yesterday we had 2 bid openings. The first is the construction of the big capital project. Right now, it happened yesterday at noon. We're currently going through the de-scoping process. The plan is hopefully maybe have an emergency board meeting sometime next week to approve those contracts. because one of those contracts is the general contractor. They are the coordinators of the project. So getting them on board so that we can really hone in on the timeline is crucial. So we'll be looking for that board meeting next week. In addition to that, on today's agenda is the approval of their energy performance contract. Again, this is a no tax impact to the community. It's a budget neutral. Essentially, our contribution towards the energy efficient contract is our energy savings. So what we're paying in energy is what we will continue to pay. But as they go down, we take that portion of our utilities and goes to it, and the New York State picks up the rest of it, which is great because right now utilities are going up and up and up, and this will help prevent those escalations to impact us in the future. So today that will be discussed. In addition, from the budget standpoint, we already talked about the budget. So what we wanted to share is we recently did 3 budget transfers. The first one is $50,000 to cover the electricity. As we talked about 2 weeks ago, our budget was exhausted after the February bill came in because of the rate increases. So this is one of the importance of why you have contingency in the budget. So when you have these rising costs, you have the ability to pay for it. Bad news is, as you use that, you have less money to put in the reserves at the end of the year. But the good news is we are able to keep the lights on through the end of the year. And then we're working through some financial strategies to bring some additional state aid in. So right now we were earmarked to buy technology direct from the vendor. So you're seeing a swap between a couple codes where we're going to increase. Right now we have $6,000 budgeted in security cameras. New York State Safe Act allows us to do up to $35,000 and get reimbursed. So the $29,000 will maximize that aid to provide security cameras to the district. And then in lieu, we were replacing that money from the technology equipment code to a BOCES code. So now that $29,000, when we go to purchase switches, will now be eligible for BOCES aid at roughly 40% aid ratio. So again, we're just looking at strategies to try to bring back additional state aid to the community by just moving money into the categories that start increasing aid. So again, kind of similar to what we talked about with the transportation salaries a couple of weeks ago, we're just trying to do some strategy to increase our state aid for future years.
Okay, so first I would be looking for a motion to approve the bid award for the energy performance contract, also known as the EPC. Can I get a motion on that, please? A second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that's carried. And then do you want us to talk about the meeting now for Monday, or would you rather I move on and do that later?
We can,
I'll bring it up later then in board comments. Okay, moving on to consent agenda. I would be talking about minutes. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes for March 4th, 2026 board meeting and March 9th, 2026 workshop. Can I get a motion? A second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Jen, I only have one thing. It says in the comments from the BOE that the secondary tour has been rescheduled for March 7th. It should say 17th. Probably just missed the one when you were typing. No big deal. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that's carried. The treasurer report. I'm looking for a motion to accept the treasurer report from February of 2026. Can I get a motion, please?
I'll move.
And a second? All right, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that's carried. Moving on to personnel. Is everybody okay if we take the 2 topics together? Okay. Then I'm looking for a motion to approve the appointments for the election inspectors for the annual vote and election on May 19th, 2026. And also the 25-26 coach of Greg Flynn as the Mod A softball coach year 1. Could I get a motion, please? A second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that's carried. Moving on to new business, old business, create position. I'm looking for a motion to approve creating the position of a 1.0 occupational therapist for 10 months, effective July 1st of 2026.
I'll move.
And a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that's carried. Next, we're moving on to donation. I'm looking for a motion to accept the donation of a Craig track saw valued at $483.74 for use in the maintenance department and or technology classrooms, donated by Art Kirsch from Canandaigua, New York. Could I get a motion, please?
I'll move.
And a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that is carried. Moving on to comments from the Board of Education. We have the coach hiring practices. So go ahead with that, Jermaine.
Yep, well, first I'd like to acknowledge that I wasn't here for the last discussion on this. I went and looked at the minutes to try to see what was said, but I did not. So I guess I am only wondering, I guess I would point out that currently, if we have a coach or an assistant that is not certified, we are not approving them at board meetings until they're certified. My only question is, I believe that it differs from the practice that we have now for teachers and other staff, where we hire people on the condition that they get their certifications, transportation director, those sorts of things. I would also add that there is a clause in the handbook that says that we can have guest coaches or guest assistants for up to 5 days without certification. So I'm wondering, is there something that separates the coach, the coaching from the teaching? You know what I'm trying to say? Like why is it that we're all right floating other folks without certifications, but we're not comfortable with doing it with coaches so that they can get going for the season and such?
So I guess I'm not aware of the teaching part of it. I didn't know any of that information. I think with the coaching part, our thing was that coaches were getting approved and then it wasn't being followed through. So that's why we reverted back to that and not approving anyone until everything was done and then approving them. And then if need be, we did have special meetings to approve them. And I think that, in my opinion, that we've been doing it in a timely manner. We've been doing it that afternoon if we need to, or like the next day. So that's, I guess, where I stand on it.
Where is that written? Because I don't know either.
Where is what written?
What you just said about the coaches and 5 days.
In the coach's handbook, we were just reviewing it today. It says it, and I don't have it with me.
Oh, okay. Because I don't believe I didn't know about that.
But-
But like, I will agree with what Megan said. In the past, that was past practice, was we did have coaches being approved, and then there were things that were not working out with that people were out there without certifications and not completing. So I know that we went back to that because several board members stated that it was a potential liability to the district if we have people out there, especially with sports and things. And, just think about the interactions you might have with the player, that it would be a potential liability if we weren't for certain that everyone had finished their certifications. That's where we left it last time.
If I could interject, if it's okay.
Yeah.
Just for some of the new board members, just to bring you up to speed, Karen and Sandy, I think you weren't on the board when we talked about this. The concern came up because in order to coach and to be approved, you have to have a certain number of certifications as well and trainings, as well as the CPR and first aid training. The concern with the waiting for the CPR and first aid training is oftentimes those are only offered on certain dates.
So what happened is some of our coaches who had all of the training, all of everything else, all their certifications ready to go, practice was going to be starting that following week. The training was the day after the board meeting or maybe the Friday after the board meeting. So rather than waiting until the next board meeting, which could be 2 weeks, maybe a month later, we had asked, I know Mark Pulver, athletic director, had said, would we reconsider going back to a way that we had once done it, which was approving if they, as long as coaches had everything except for the CPR and first aid, if the board would approve pending CPR and first aid. And then it would be the responsibility of the district to make sure that that coach had that before the first day of practice, which I think we're doing. I know of one instance where a coach was out on the field before they were certified as a helper, not knowing that they weren't supposed to be out there. They were not the head coach. But I'm not aware of other instances, so that could be the case. But I would like to, our athletic director posed the question, so I don't, I'm not opposed to the board revisiting that and putting that back on the district to make sure that we are the ones ensuring the coaches are completed with their trainings before that first day of practice. So again, just turning it back over to the board to make that decision.
If I might just ask for clarification, what is the difference in the liability? Well, first, am I correct in my understanding that we do have teachers and other staff come in with the condition that they have certifications completed?
Yes.
May I ask what the difference is in the liability with that versus the liability of having a coach not certified?
I'm not sure. I'd have to get back to you on that answer.
Understood.
I don't know about the liability, but a concern that I would have as a parent of kids in sports, like versus in the classroom, like the teachers, right? They have a nurse to back them up. Should something happen and there's no CPR, there's no first aid training, I want to know that my daughter's soccer coach knows what he's doing when she gets hit in the head and gets a concussion as goalie. So again, I don't know the piece of liability, but to me, there is a difference. School has that nurse practice. And I think I remember a little bit of the discussion, and it was a CPR that was not completed yet. So as a parent, that's a huge concern for me. We hear all the time of accidents happening to kiddos. So again, I can't speak directly, but as a parent, that's a concern for me if a coach does not have that training.
Yes, ma'am. I understand that. I did not take that into consideration for certain.
Just so I know, because I'm not exactly sure, what do the teachers, are they allowed to do? What are the certifications would they be missing? Are we talking about like the master's degrees or something like that?
No, for example, if we hired a new teacher for the fall, we bring those for board approval before we might be done checking their certifications and getting their fingerprints and all of that. So the board is approving some of that prior to us receiving that back.
Okay, but they have to have their certifications done before they'll step foot in the classroom, right?
They have to have their certifications complete, yes, but we might not have that information yet. Jen, do you want to talk a little bit about it as the person who checks certifications?
Maybe.
Thank you. So with the certifications, we do hire sometimes teacher assistants. We hire teacher assistants that are not certified, and they have up to 12 months to receive their teaching certification. So they get hired without certification. Some teachers who have just graduated from college or finishing up their degree, we do hire them sometimes before they receive their initial certification. But again, they have a time limit that within that first year, they're supposed to receive their certification, and we follow up. We look into that and check it throughout the year. And I double check. I keep writing to the principal or the teachers to make sure that they're following what they need to get. So we do hire sometimes people who have not had their final certification with the intent that they have that time limit to get that. So that's, and you do hire people because I can't look into their background without them being hired because I can't collect their social security number and their personal information until they're, people are not going to come in and give me that information without them being hired. So once we get that, and if we find somebody who's not following what they need to be doing, then we would bring it to you and then we can rescind that appointment. But usually they want their job and they go through the processes to get their proper certifications.
So I guess, I get your point, Jermaine. But like Mark was basically asking us to approve them and they're going to get their certification within so many days and then they'll be able to start practice, right?
What Mark was asking, it was because there were a few coaches that were signed up for a later, it was an after the board meeting
Right.
CPR training, and the first day of practice was shortly thereafter. So we knew they were signed up for the training. That was the last thing they needed, and the board couldn't meet until after that. It was much later than the first day of practice. So the varsity coach or would either took the JV kids, that was one thing that happened, or there was a time where practice was delayed until we could meet. So it was a 5-day delay in practice starting because the board meeting wasn't until a week later. So
Gotcha.
I hear what everybody's saying. We certainly agree with the board when they say we don't want anybody who isn't CPR and first aid trained in front of kids as a coach. So we firmly and strongly believe in that stance. I think the question was just if the board would go back to approving pending, and then we would be the ones to ensure that they are not in front of kids pending until they have that certificate, that training and certification complete.
Well, I'd be okay with that because they're going to have it before they're in front of the kids anyway. So if it helps for us to approve them a few days before they have that course, which is before practice, then I'm okay with that.
And again, I think the concern was because there was somebody who was an assistant who was on the field trying to help, but the other people on the field were CPR and first aid trained, the other coaches that were on the field. Okay, but Mark noticed that and had that person off the field.
I guess moving forward, like I would want to wait to decide because we're having this whole new coaching handbook now, right? So I guess in like the 5-day grace period where someone's allowed to go on, that's new to me too. So I think before I can make a decision on anything, I would wait until the handbook is done. So then I know what processes are being done in the coaching because everything's going to be changing, right? So for me to be better informed, I would want to wait until we made a decision, until we're done process with the new coaching handbook.
Yeah, I think I'd like to stay the way that we are until the coach's handbook is done, and then we can definitely approach it again. I have no issue with that. But I just want to make sure that, things happen, like, sometimes the head coach can't be there and an assistant coach has to take over the practice. And if for some reason it's the second day of practice and somebody doesn't have their training, we're putting our kids in harm's way, and I'm not comfortable doing that.
And I understand that.
I think we should wait until the handbook is completed before we change anything.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't disagree with that. I would only say that it's my understanding that we are not letting them, if they were supposed to be certified, in an example, if we were to approve them, they were supposed to be certified, they didn't get certified, wouldn't our AD not let them on the field at all? Like, we're not discussing letting someone be a coach without certification. What we're discussing is approving them without certification with the understanding that they can't enter the field if for some reason they did not get certified.
Correct. You would be approving pending certification, and then it would be the athletic director and or the district's job to make sure that they did in fact complete their certification prior to that first day.
And just to be double clear, that means, speaking to Karen's concern, we wouldn't have someone on the field not certified. We would say you were supposed to, you did not. Okay, just absolutely. But I'm all right with waiting for the handbook to be finished, certainly.
Okay, is that all with that one? Jermaine, you set? Okay, everybody else set? Okay. All right, does anybody have any other comments from the board? Megan?
Sure, I had the legislative meeting this past weekend. We had guest speakers from NYSERDA, which is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. They explained kind of what their committee does and the role in implementing the EV bus mandate, which a lot of schools are not happy about. But we did talk about Naples. They just had a report that came out and it was like 100 and something pages. We did not, no one had really looked into it yet. So, but just to know that it's out there and we're all gonna each review it and just to see what it looked like. I did feel bad because I feel like all the reviews that we've had was all negative, like why we don't want it personally and how we don't think it would work for us. But they were receptive to it and just kind of explained like their view on it and how they believe that it will help us in the long run, even though we don't see it helping us being more expensive. We live in the hills, like there's many factors in our school that we don't see it being very supportive for us in a way. But it was very eye-opening just to see what other districts are dealing with and are experiencing and do align with our same views. Just next steps moving forward, our next meeting is in April, just to further advocate like efforts of the EV bus mandate, see if the state can give us any more grant money or anything else out there for those schools that are looking for it. Just our upcoming meetings, and that's about it. So, and if you guys have any questions, please let me know about the bus mandate or like if there's something that you want to advocate for personally, let me know so I can do that when we're making our papers and finishing our state paper.
I got a quick question for you.
I'll see if I can answer.
I'll read the report, but do you happen to know, did they do it for like a full year, have an electric bus, or did they not do it through the winter or?
I think it's through the selective seasons. I'm not sure. Derek might know more.
Can I actually?
Oh, okay.
Just because I work very closely with the superintendent of Naples, they were awarded the 2 EV buses a few years ago when they were doing a lottery for districts to obtain a bus. So they've been doing research. They use it it's part of their fleet. So they do have 2. Their director of transportation has done an outstanding job of collecting data, looking at routes. There has been some concerns with things such as weather. When the weather dips below a certain temperature, the charge isn't as strong. So the charge isn't a full charge by the end of the day. So they can't use that bus for the afternoon route. That wasn't something they realized until I think it was last year when the temperatures got really low. So that was a new concern. Other concerns are, again, just a lot of it is due to charging. It is due to heating the bus. So if you are more heat on the bus, again, due to weather, now the charge is depleting faster. So a lot of their concerns are over the months where we would need buses most. We do have our morning runs and we use the same buses for our afternoons runs. We have 2 runs, so we're going out, coming back, out and back twice a day. So that would be problematic. And then obviously living in a rural area where we're more, houses are more widespread, that could be a concern. And then lastly, Megan, you mentioned the hills, and that is a concern. When you're going up and down, that also is depleting the charge faster. Derek, if you want to add.
I also want to add that their transportation director personally owns electric vehicles himself, so he was an advocate for them until they started using them. So his report is unbiased, which I think speaks a lot because when they first got the buses, I went over to Naples because they were kind of like the showcase. Everybody went there. I rode on the bus. I've been underneath the bus because they had it up on lifts. I didn't crawl underneath it. They are cool, but they're just not practical in our world. In the summer, they're quiet, which is kind of weird. You can't even tell it's running. They have great pickup if the weather's great, like everybody keeps saying. And so I think the report from Naples is telling because the person who wrote it, they themselves are advocates of EV vehicles, and he's just saying it just doesn't work. So I just wanted to add that point that he isn't a biased person speaking about it. But one of the things that in his report, he mentioned that the cost per mile is 5 times more, especially, and that was before the energy rate went in. I think they said it was something in the 30 cents per mile on a diesel bus and well over $1 a mile on the electric buses before these rate increases. Plus the buses are triple the cost, plus you got to add the infrastructure in, and then so I work with their business official all the time. The utility company said, yeah, we can give you all the utilities to do this, but the rest of the community cannot turn on their lights in order to bring enough power to power them.
Anything else? No, that's okay. Let's see, I have just to report back that I did attend the New York State School Boards Association Superintendent Evaluation Workshop on March 8th for almost 4.5 hours. I took 20 pages of notes, and I also shared everything that I got with the entire board. It's in my recap. If you read that, there's 2 links, so that you can watch back the video, the recorded video of everything, and then also all of the PowerPoint presentation is there, which they said would only be there for 30 days. So I would strongly encourage you to take the opportunity to, even if you're not looking at it, like play it while you're doing something, so you get it in your head, because as you know, part of our job is to evaluate the superintendent, and we will have that upcoming for the end of the year evaluation. So it was very helpful. I learned a couple of things. I've talked to Superintendent Fluke about a couple of things that I learned that I did not know. So I'm assuming most of you may not know. So check it out. It was $140, but if you have 7 of us able to look at it, it certainly helps with the cost. So I did participate in that. I would definitely participate in something like that again. And then on March 26th, New York State School Board Association is having a data privacy and cybersecurity 101 complimentary webinar that I asked Jen to sign me up for because it is of no cost to the district. It's a 1-hour thing. And so I will be taking that on the 26th virtually. Then the board has been asked to write their annual budget newsletter. So it will go in the newsletter that goes out for the budget. And the board president and the board always put something together. We can do it like we have in years past, where I draft something and send it out to everybody for approval, or if anybody has any ideas that you'd like to send my way that you would like to see, especially with you and Jerry being on the finance committee, making sure that if there's some information that you could put in there that you think is important, please send that. I have to have that in by the beginning of April. There's a few days past that, but I would like to have it done and in early. And then I will also be writing a thank you for the tours to the elementary and middle school secondary. Again, if you want, I will draft the letter like I did last year. I will send it out. But if you have any wording or ideas that you would like in there, make sure you let me know. And I would like to get that out by the middle of next week at the absolute latest. So if you can have stuff to me by Friday, if I don't see anything, I'm not gonna come asking. If it's not there by Friday at 4 o'clock, then I'll just write it and then send a draft out for everybody. And then lastly, I believe we have to talk about the opportunity of March 23rd. Right, Jen, that's the date for Monday? March 23rd at 6 o'clock. Is everyone available to do a special meeting so that we can take care of the capital improvement project items?
I'll be available.
And I am available. 6 o'clock? And Sandy, you are? Jermaine, you are?
I am not available.
Okay. There's a quorum. Is that okay? Okay. Do you need a motion on that or just? Okay. So then I would need a motion for the Board of Education to hold a special meeting of the board on March 23rd at 6 o'clock. I get a motion? And a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that is carried. So we will be back here March 23rd, which is next Monday at 6 o'clock.
I think we have to do it up there. I think that this is already taken. So, okay.
Okay. And then, if nobody has any other comments to share with the board, okay, then there's information for the board. And do we need to go into executive session for anything? Then it is a lucky time of evening, everyone. I would be looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
And a second, okay. Any final discussion?
No.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Yes, I was
Yeah.
gonna